Hey everybody, Matt Belanger, Planning Director for the town of Williston, coming at you on my Instagram story today. I promised this in a post a little earlier. We do have our first proposed building under the Taft Corners Form-Based Code that was adopted by the Select Board in October of 2022. And I wanted to take some time in my story today to talk through the particulars of that building and site design and how it's responsive to the new code and how it's different from what you might have seen being built in Williston before because of that code. So stick with me and we'll talk about a 4-story, 115-room hotel in Taft Corners at Finney Crossing in the next couple of posts. So real quick, the building we're talking about is being proposed at the corner of Market Street and Holland Lane in Taft Corners, Williston. You can see a little bit of shading on the map here, and what this is showing is that the site for the hotel on this corner is next to the Railroad and Main green and the LL Bean parking lot, and the orange shading on the street means it's in the town center frontage of the new form-based code. The town center frontage is one of our building form standards, and it allows up to 5-story buildings with a potential for a 6th attic story. In this case, we are talking about a 4-story building. In this case, in addition to the building form standards, the architectural standards of the form-based code do a lot to how this building is going to look. In particular, the requirement for fenestration, or how much of the walls facing the street has to be in a glass or window configuration, and the breaking up of the facade of the building into what are called facade compositions is really driving the difference in the design of this hotel from what you might normally see in a 4-story chain hotel. Now, if you're in Williston and you get your local paper, the Williston Observer, today, you might see this picture on the cover. This is a preliminary design for the hotel, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how this design was changed in response to the requirements of the form-based code. Okay, so the picture on the front page of the newspaper today looks like this, and this was the first version of the architectural design of the hotel that we saw with our form-based code submission. But based on our comments and feedback and running through the 80-page long form-based code checklist, there were some changes that were needed before this could be approvable. And what we ultimately ended up with is something that looks like this. So don't worry about trying to notice all the changes. I'm going to talk through them in the next couple of posts. All right, so number one, and a really easy one to talk about, is signs. You'll notice on this facade, we have signs up near the top of the building. That's not allowed in the form-based code. They need to come down and be located between the 1st and 2nd floors. No signs at the tops of buildings like this are allowed anymore in Williston. I mentioned before we have some minimum requirements for windows as well. And there's a few things happening here on the ground floor. There's not quite enough glass to cover the minimum percentage there. And then the facade compositions, or the different parts of the building as they go across the street, aren't quite different enough from one another to meet the requirements of the code. In particular, they're not different enough in terms of the percentage of each of these subsections of the facade that's made up of glass. Wherever there's a flat roof on the building or a parapet wall, it needs to have a cornice that sticks out over beyond the facade of the building. And we did notice in this plan, we didn't see a shadow line under this cornice, and we wanted to make sure there was a detail that there would be something overhanging that flat element to add some visual interest to the building. We also saw that we needed to see a little detail of a cornice overhang here on this facade as the building wraps the corner at Market and Holland. So to bring it all together on the new facade, the signs have come down and are now between the 1st and 2nd story. We have our nice parapet overhangs here. We have a big change in the windows on the ground story, adding more glass and meeting that percentage of fenestration. And the applicant's choice to add some color to the building facade also now helps those 4 facade compositions be differentiated from one another on this Market Street frontage of the building. I need to run to a meeting right now, but when we come back, I'll talk about the site plan and some of the elements of the form-based code that show up when we look at the site plan. So now let's go back and take a look at the site plan for this new hotel. It's at the corner of Holland Lane and Market Street. In this picture, north is up, and if you were to go down on the plan, you would end up in the parking lot for LL Bean. To the left of the plan is the green in front of the Railroad and Main restaurant. The first thing to notice about this building is that the building comes right up to the street, or where it doesn't come right up to the street, there's a patio or other element, including bike racks and landscaping, that comes up to the street. There's a chamfered corner here with a small patio area holding down the corner and then stepping down to the sidewalk at the intersection of Market Street and Holland Lane. Along Market Street, you see the same pattern with the building coming up close to the street with bicycle parking, landscaping, and entrances facing the street on each of the facade compositions. Lastly, wherever there's not a building on the street, the form-based code requires a masonry street wall to be built. This is a 4-foot-high brick wall with a concrete cap on the top to complete the look and provide some presence on the street. The form-based code requires a percentage of the buildable area of the site to be dedicated to what's called private open area. This is an open area that's behind the street wall and parking setback, and in the case of the hotel includes this large patio that runs around the back of the hotel towards the porte cochere and driving circulation to enter the hotel. You see some more bike racks here and pedestrian facilities throughout, as well as a way to walk back out down to Market Street. There's also a crosswalk and pedestrian sidewalk and landscaping with structured soil and large shade trees running through the parking lot toward the power lines along Zephyr Road to provide a pedestrian connection out to the Zephyr Road multi-use path. With an L-shaped hotel like this, with an entry on the inside of the L, usually the outside, in this case what faces Holland Lane and Market Street, is the back of the hotel. And it is definitely a design challenge to make the backside of a hotel look good and interact well with the street. But our facade compositions rules, minimum glazing, and requirement that each facade composition has an entry door along the street means that this building will be activated along the streetscape in Finney Crossing, providing visual interest and a sense that the building is part of the environment and has not turned its back to the streetscape. So thanks for sticking with me today to talk through this new proposed hotel at Finney Crossing. I really appreciate it when folks can interact with our new zoning code and understand how it plays out in terms of what they might actually see on the street. We will be moving forward with permit review on this and noticing what's called a project review meeting, which will be a publicly accessible staff meeting between myself and the Public Works Director and Fire Chief or Deputy Chief to review the particulars of this. Probably we are looking towards a decision on this building in the next 6 to 8 weeks. Thanks.